Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. I'm your Oliver Shorty. Going to look at No Place today. This I think is like the third or fourth of the new range of Ignition books that I've been reviewing, taking a shot on all of them. And it's been a bit of a mixed bag, not going to lie. There's been some which have been technically interesting, but not quite for me. Some which had great ideas but were well executed, and one which was just not great. This one is the first one where I genuinely thought I'd have like the confidence to be like, right, okay, I'm expecting this to be good. It's got two people involved who I actually really quite like. Tim Seeley is a writer with game, not necessarily up there with like the best at what he does. His name on something will at least get my attention, if not me absolutely just throw into my pull list straight away. He's no size superior. But then you've got Stefano Simeone, I apologise if I mispronounced that surname, I've never been sure on that one, who has a fantastic artistic style, really reminds me whenever I see it of We Only Find Them When They're Dead, which was a brilliant comic that came out a few years ago. But the artwork, although it was huge and bold, was just too busy, and stuff would overrun and bleed. And I think Stefano just does a way better job of keeping it crisp and clear, keeping the intent there, and it works brilliantly throughout like almost every bit of this comic book. There's a couple of moments where I feel like maybe it's too much, but that might just be a me thing. And that comes down to the basic plot of it, and it is the plot which kind of the driving reason why I enjoyed it as much as I did, because my first encounter with the hobby tabletop role playing, which became this huge part of my life and still is right now, was a Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, Saturday morning cartoon thing, where it's some kids who end up going through the magical portal into the Dungeons and Dragons realms and fighting all these amazing things, and it's such a cool idea. And then years later, Kieran Gillen did the Die comic, which is a story about them coming back out and how weird and messed up that'd be. And without me really realising it at the time, I think it was that little bit of the story which dragged me in. That was the bit where I was like, how hard would that have been? Because this childhood fantasy of going to these magical realms and doing these amazing things and having these fantastical creatures befriend you, that's all brilliant. Even if it was actually happening to you, it's still a fantasy experience. And to come back to the real world and encounter people who do not believe you, or maybe try to sympathise with you but they can't empathise, there'd be infantilization, there'd be people who would continually look down on you or mock you, and even going through periods where you go and get help for what happened, speaking to therapists and counsellors, you could end up doubting what actually happened to you. I mean, anyone who spent any time looking how memory works knows that that is absolutely a thing that can happen, and I found that to be a very, very fascinating look at it. And yes, don't get me wrong, when it comes to writing stories, you want to do the most exciting, interesting parts of the characters' lives, so they very much went back into the world. And yeah, I get that, but I think that core concept as an idea really appealed to me. And No Place does something similar. Here we have another character, a young lady who basically went through some magical door into the realm, and it is beautiful and fantastical, and a place worth fighting for, a place worth saving. And then she comes back out of it and has to go through all of that, and we catch up with her after that most interesting part of her life. We catch up with her when she was working in a diner, getting mocked by drunken teenagers, and having to continually defend her rights to kind of have a truth. And I'm not going to lie, there's a little bit of me which had a queer reading on that one, but I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. Now again, because as I said, the most exciting part of a character's journey is what we should be focusing on, so we then, by the end of the issue, get her going back into a fantasy world after meeting some other people who tell her that no, this wasn't a fantasy that happened to you, this wasn't a delusion, this wasn't something you've made up, this is true, we believe you, we know it to be reality in its own way. And then we go off on this adventure, and don't get me wrong, I think that's a solid setup for a comic book, but I do have some hopes and expectations. One of those is we have a little bit more time to figure out who she was before she went through the first time, her adventures were happening there, and what it was like for her to come back, how her family and career and education were all affected by this kind of thing. And I will say I'm looking forward to the adventure in these other worlds, because I think that's where Stefano's artwork is going to absolutely shine, because there were a few moments where, as I said early on, felt a bit much. And when you are in a diner and somebody just going through a 9-to-5 job that they clearly don't like but have to do, and have to put up with being treated like crap to get tips for people taking the piss out of them, I feel like Simeone's artwork was just a bit too much, and I wouldn't ever want them to like load themselves down or turn the volume down or like that. In my head, my first thought was, this would be a great opportunity to bring in like a guest artist, but then also it's the first issue. You want to put your best talent up there and you want to get them out there. And I cannot criticize, but in my head there's just something which felt not quite 100% right. Still, it didn't stop me enjoying the comic book. I'm looking forward to the rest of it. That's it for now, though. Until I see you all again. Look after yourselves, everyone. Stay safe.